E360 TV proudly presents Messages of Inspirational Stories, broadcasting and live streaming to millions of devices around the world, including Roku, and live streaming to Facebook Live. Also on Amazon Fire TV and to Twitch. Also Android TV and Periscope. Broadcasting to Apple TV and YouTube Live. Proudly brought to you by our host, Donna Guinois, producer and host, Michaela Vidal, host and administrator, and Jim Grant, producer and host. Proudly brought to you by the 6minutewebinar.com. And welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. We're so glad to be here today. We've got some great information for you. We're talking this week about stress. And I know that all of us suffer from stress to some degree. Some suffer more than others. But over the last 2 weeks, we had Mr. X on. And if you were able to catch those shows about marketing, you know, I mean, I don't even have to explain it to you. The lights were on and this guy was home. Because in Mr. X, this gentleman, let me say this, all of the marketing gurus that I know, and I know a few, you might say, they either know who Mr. X is, but chances are a lot of them have been trained by Mr. X. And we were so fortunate to have him on. And he's going to come up behind the curtain once some things get settled. You know, there was reasons for that, and I don't want to go into it now, but when you hear the reason, you will fully understand. But he shared a lot about getting prepared for the new wave, because a lot of people think, well, I'm really looking forward to when things get back to normal. Nothing's going to get back to normal. It never has, and it never will, because history repeats itself. And as humans, we do the same thing over and over and over and over. I mean, we can invent new things, but other than that, we're still humans with our faults, our shortcomings, and our, opinions, I'll say. But yesterday, in dealing with stress, we felt like the very first show should be my good friend, Professor and Dr. Grant, Dr. George Grant, up in Canada. And let me pull up his website a little bit as I talk about this, because this is extremely important. Let's see, here it is, the academyofwellness.com. To be able to fight and prepare yourself for any physical or mental battle, you've got to be properly nourished. You got to be properly hydrated. We covered a lot of that yesterday in yesterday's show. And the reason that's important, your physical health, starting with your nutrition, that is the cornerstone of your lifestyle. And if you take good care of yourself, then you've laid the foundation, the cornerstone of the foundation to be able to build upon. And that enables you to remain healthy, physically healthy. And also helps you deal with stress, which keeps you mentally healthy. And those two are very, very important. They work together in perfect balance and perfect harmony. And many times, if one is out of balance, it's going to throw the other one out of balance. And for some reason, I didn't glue these things in good enough this time. But if you see them pop out, this thing about one size fits all does not work for my ears. But I want to talk to you today a little bit about preparing for 2022, because 2022 is not that far away. Yes, we're, a little bit past mid-September, but 2022 is going to be coming. Now, let me ask you a question. Are you going to prepare for the New Year's resolution, or would you like to start preparing now for a New Year's revolution? Some of you might say, wow, that sounds pretty good. All these resolutions I tried, they normally fall by the wayside by the, second month, third month, if you're really if you push a little further. But a revolution, that's what we need in our lives. We really do. We need, and when I talk about revolution, I'm not talking about, us going up against or start complaining and hollering at well, let's be honest, our good for nothing politicians. And we're going to leave that subject right there. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is the same revolutionary spirit that people have seen down through the passage of time. Now, I'm not going to start back centuries, earlier, but I will start around 1720. What was going on during that period of time? Let me pull up my notes here very quickly, if I may. In 1720, during that time, there was many outbreaks of the bubonic plague, but this was known as the Great Plague of Marseilles, and it was a major outbreak in France of the plague, and the disease killed more than 100,000 people, and 50,000 were in the city. And the next 2 years, I forgot to silence my phone. I apologize for that. And the next 2 years, another 50,000 in the northern surrounding provinces and towns died. And while the economic activity took only a few years to recover, it took to about 1765 before the population grew back up to where it was before the plague set in. And just keep it in your mind about that disaster happening, the fear, the same thing that a lot of people went through in 2020. History repeats itself, and we react to history the same way today that people did in the past. And give you an example, on September the 16th of 1720, during the plague, I forgot to mention this note. There was a guy by the name of Nicholas Rose, R-O-Z-E, and he headed a group of about 150 volunteers, and made up of volunteers and prisoners. And they went in to clean out a poor community where 1,200 people had died. And there were only 3 survivors out of that 150 from this bubonic plague. And even Rose himself became stricken with the disease, but he would survive, even though the survival rate without the proper medication like we have today was between 20 and, if you were real healthy, up to 40%. But there was a 60% to 80% chance you were going to die if you got the plague. Think about how that preyed on the mind. Now let's think about how we felt in 2020, how stressful it was for us. We all heard these wild stories. And some people, I'm not saying, I'm not picking on anybody or pointing anybody out, but some people ran rapid with their imagination. They had the Chicken Little attitude. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. Oh my gosh, what are we going to do? But, we all heard the same things. It was doom and gloom, right? And whoever the Einstein was, it came up that the most important thing on planet Earth for us to have was toilet paper. I don't even know how that, and we're not going to even go there because I'm not going to waste good TV time even talking about that, but I'm kind of thinking, it had to be a guy. You ladies are too intelligent to come up with something like that. You ladies would come up with canned goods and things that's practical, It had to be a guy to come up, boy, we need some toilet paper. You know that? At least it sounds like something a guy would come up with. And then in 1820, they call it 1820 just to keep round figures with 2020 today and all that. But that was the first cholera pandemic from 1817 through 1824. So it had several years there. And in the years that the pandemic, it spread throughout all areas of the world, and there was still many pockets of outbreaks that would pop up every now and then of cholera. And so, it's the same thing we're going to see in this pandemic with the coronavirus. It's not just going to up and die one day. It's going to have outbreaks and spurts and all of that, but we will conquer it. We will overcome. I'm a firm believer in that. And then came the Spanish flu. Oh my goodness. You talk about doom and gloom. During the first part of the 20th century, we had a double scoop of both. We had World War I that was actually started by the assassination of the Archbishop or Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. I didn't look into that. I know that's what the catalyst was. I didn't look into the details of it because it would have been, too much information for what we want to cover today. But that was the catalyst that started that war. And it ran from 1914 to 1918. And there was about 8.5 million soldiers, people, that lost their lives in combat. But also, too, there was about 13 million civilians that lost their life as a direct result of the war. Buildings, bombs and getting shot and whatever, being at the wrong place, wrong time, whatever. I mean, you're talking about, 13 million there, 8.5 million who were combat soldiers, 8 and 13. That's 21.5 million people got killed and wiped out just from war because of the assassination of that archbishop or that archduke, as Franz, F-A-R-N-Z, Ferdinand. I think he was the Archduke of Austria, if I remember correctly. And then to put salt on the wound, from 1980 through 1920 was the Spanish flu. There were 4 major outbreaks during that time of the Spanish flu. And there was about 500 million cases worldwide, and they estimate anywhere from 25 to 50 million people lost their life to that. Now, you might say, well, Jim, what does that have to do with stress? Well, a lot, really, when you think about it, because after all of these disasters, be it the war, be it, disease, pandemics, whatever you want to call it, people everywhere have the same type of burning desire deep down inside, that revolution that I mentioned earlier. And that revolution is, I want to live. I'm sick and tired of the doom and gloom. I'm sick and tired of hearing all this, negative news. I'm sick and tired of all this nonsense that doesn't do me any good. All it can do is spread fear, and fear is the worst thing on planet Earth. It really is, because all of the negative emotions can fit right under fear. There's only 2 major emotions. One is fear and the other one's love. And with fear, you got greed, you got all these, all the sins of mankind. They fall under that major heading. But we were not put here on planet Earth to live in fear. We were put here on planet Earth, listen up, to live in love and abundance. Now, when I say abundance, I'm not talking just necessarily material things. Yes, that's part of it. No question about it. But material things are not the all in all. Because the real things that we really treasure in life is love. And being able to live our life the way we want to, free from fear. Imagine it. Living a life free from fear. A lot of people struggle with that. And just like with stress, I've known some people when they're stressed out, or they say I'm stressed out or something, you can tell it, you can see it, because they're just kind of like, they're just kind of like wound up tighter than the old saying goes, a 10-cent top. But I've known other people in my life that have carried stress in their life, and they did not let it eat them up. because inside, each one had their own opinion, their own agenda, but you might say that each one of those knew that there was a better day coming. And there really is. The time to prepare for that better day coming is not after it gets here. It's now, before it gets here. And I'm going to go a little deeper into that and hopefully get some people encouraged to get into action. Because we going on with our history lesson here today, you better pay attention. There might be a test. So I hope you can pass, because I can't. But after the Spanish flu was over, World War I was over, what happened? If you look into the history books, now I was not around then. I know it's a popular myth that I was around then, but I'm old, but I'm not that old. The Roaring Twenties. People they were tired of the doom and gloom. They wanted to live in abundance. They wanted to have the best life could offer them. And kind of like was the old beer commercial? Go for the gusto. I mean, whatever you want to say, but they went for it. And the Roaring Twenties was known a lot for its parties, but a lot of wealth, a lot of millionaires were, money was, just seemed like it popped up everywhere. And I know I'm being a little simplistic there, but that was the burning desire people had deep down inside. That was their personal revolution that brought them to life. And of course, 1929 came along with the stock market crash, because there was a lot of, the things that were done there were, the building up the stocks and all that. It was not built on a solid foundation. Anything in your life is not built on a solid foundation will crumble and fall. That's just, that's going to happen. And so after the Wall Street crashed in 1929, the next thing that people went through was the Great Depression. Money was very, very scarce in those days. Jobs were even scarcer. I remember my dad telling me when he was a young man, he said, I got hired by a trucking company, because he got on started out getting a job, being a co-driver on a truck. And then he went to apply for at another company to drive a truck. And the reason why he got the job was because he knew the roads. He knew how to get the freight up there. In other words, if he started out for Ohio, he would not end up in Maine. And Dad told me, he says, in those days, I started getting paid $8 a week. We don't know how many hours it was, but it was $8 a week. That was his salary for driving that truck, going point A to point B to point A back, And Dad told me, he says, I saved my money. You think, how can you save any money on $8 a week? You got to remember $8. I mean, a dollar bill back then, I looked it up on a previous show, but I forget how much it is. But you can look up what a $1 United States dollar is in 1930 compared to today, or 1933, because you can see the inflation, how much it jumped up. And inflation is not prices going up, it's the buying power of the US dollar on the world market. That's what inflation is. And he said, then I got a raise to $10 a week. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking at him. Now, this is in the 60s. I was a kid in the 50s and an overly intelligent teenager in the 60s. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to wrap my mind, being a teenager, around $8 a week, $10 a week, and you buy a car? Gosh, payment on those things nowadays are, $100, a month. That's back in the 60s or somewhere around there. And anyway, he said, yeah, when I got up to $10 a week, I maintained my standard of living because I was already saving money on $8 a week. I got up to 10. I was able to buy myself a car. And I'm going like, wow. Now, me understanding how inflation works and the devaluation of the dollar, But back then, I could not put that together any more than a blind man could put together a 1,000-piece puzzle. I was that blind. I could not see it. But during that time, there was a couple, and I've shared this story with you before, and I want to build on this a little more on what we're talking about with stress and the new revelation coming. There was O.D. McKee and his wife, Ruth. They started out in the height of the Depression, and they were selling nickel cakes. Out of the trunk of their car, they had a 1928 Whippet. Never heard of that brand before till I, read their story. 1928 Whippet. They were driving around. Now, if my dad was driving a truck for $8 a week and other people unemployed, who would have a nickel to buy a cake? But that was their dream. They were very, very poor. And they struggled for decades. But O.D. and his wife, Ruth McKee, they believed in themselves. They believed in what they were doing. And they actually bought a bakery in 1960. So you're talking almost 27, 28 years before they were able to buy a bakery and get it set up, because the first little bakery they had, the bakery portion was up front. It was one room, one big room, and they just had sheets to block off where their living quarters were. Now that's how poor they were, but they hung in there. And so they were going to, now they're going to be manufacturing and mass producing these cakes. So they were wondering, what are we going to call these things? And someone made the suggestion that they pick a family member or name it after, someone very special to them. And their granddaughter's name was Debbie. So they picked the name Little Debbie. And they're still a privately owned, family-owned business. But that's how they got their start. So they started there during the midst of the Depression, riding around in a 1928 Whippet selling nickel cakes when my dad was driving a truck for $8 and $10 a week. Imagine how much stickability they had to have to keep it on when the going got tough. Those people were made of something that I'm not made of, okay? I'll be honest with you. That takes a lot to keep the faith, because you can imagine how many people would look and probably want a cake, couldn't afford a cake. They wish they could give the person a cake, but they couldn't afford to give away their cakes because they were poor too, Poor people can't help poor people, okay? So plug that into your mind. Now, in addition to that, came, World War II right after that. And World War II was from 1939 to 45. The U.S. got involved in 1941 after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. But after that period of time, again, people were tired of the doom and the gloom. They wanted a revolution inside. They wanted to live. They wanted to thrive. And there's nothing wrong with that, because you have the universal right to enjoy the abundance of love and all the things that love brings, as opposed to the physical, which is fear, greed, the love of money, all of these things. That's what enslaves you. To set yourself free, let go of anything that's bothering you. Let go of your worries. I know that's tough, but try it. Just say, I'm going to love myself first. I'm going to love others. And most importantly, I'm not going to listen to any type of doom and gloom that tries to scare me or get me worried or think, oh my gosh, because things that's outside of your control, you don't have any control over anyway. So why worry about it? What you can do to be proactive rather than reactive, you can actually make sure you maintain your health and Go through the things that Dr. Grant and I talked about yesterday: proper nutrition, proper hydration of your body, proper breathing exercises through your stomach, you expanding your stomach, not your chest going up, but your stomach going out. And I had to work on that myself, because I'm usually inhaling like this up and down, but it's more expanding the stomach. And Academy of Wealth there, I think I still got his marquee up there, don't I? Yeah, I sure do. But anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and about what we covered the first day. Also, too, Donna, myself, and Michaela, we are so honored, let me find it here, to support and advertise the charity we selected, the sheltertosoldier.org. And I think let me just take a little sidetrack here. It's kind of like a little commercial, if you may, or a little, not really commercial, but a little sidetrack here. Shelter to Soldier initially saves 2 lives, but then, as Donna pointed out, it saves more than that. Because these folks go into the shelters where the dogs are going to be put to sleep. And they rescue these dogs that, when you look at them, excuse me, when you look at them, they're probably the dogs that most people will maybe not select when they go to the shelter. But these dogs, there's something about them that they have this, whatever it is, and they're selected and they're worked with. And they're trained a specific way. Because dogs are a lot more intuitive than us guys. And you girls, you ladies out there, you're a lot more intuitive than us guys are, And of course, some guys may say, that's not true. Yes, it is. And you ladies know that I'm telling you true. But sometimes us guys, you got to almost use a little thump therapy on us to get our attention. You awake now? But, these dogs, they're trained. And then when the soldier comes over, this is a soldier suffer from PTSD, comes over, and they bring out 5 or 6 dogs based on the interview that they've done with the soldier to find out, as much as they can about the person. And they select 5 or 6 dogs that might be the best choice for this soldier. And they just, let the dog and the dogs and the soldier, just kind of like, meet. And it's not just, okay, there's your dog and here you go, but it's a process. And the dog and the soldier, they both must bond. And the dog, being properly trained, knows what the mission is. And the beauty of that is that since every single soldier that has received a dog has not committed suicide. You think about that. And in Mr. X's last 2 weeks, if you donate $100 to the Shelter to Soldier organization, Mr. X will give you 30 minutes of focal time to evaluate your business, your marketing, and give you some great advice, not good advice, but great advice. And he will not try to sell you something else. This is a safe zone. This is a free zone. It is a secure zone that you can actually donate $100 to the Shelter to Soldier organization and get 30 minutes of Mr. X's eyeballs and his brains focused on your business. Mr. X, I know him personally. I spent thousands of dollars taking a course from him. As I said earlier, all of the major people I know who are marketing gurus, let me share with you, if you need some marketing, I'm your guy or I'm your gal. They know who Mr. X is, and most of them have paid money to attend his courses. And I'm not picking on them or anything, but I'm just saying that's just the way the world turns, okay? I'm just being straight up with you. And like I said early on in the broadcast, there's a reason why he wanted to remain hidden for right now. And when you hear the story, and you will hear the story in a future broadcast, you will go, okay, that makes perfect sense. And because he himself is recovering right now from a traumatic brain injury, okay? And that's all I'm going to say there, okay? But anyway, Shelter to Soldier is a wonderful organization. Please check them out and if you do, get in touch with Dustin there, Dustin Potash, Potash. And if you do donate money to them, either let Dustin know, because Dustin knows who Mr. X is, or email us here at the TV station, inspiration@e360tv.com, and someone will, our staff will get it to us, and we'll make sure we do a personal invitation for you to Mr. X, and you will know who Mr. X is. And when you go to his website and you see the things he's done, and you're going to realize, oh my goodness, this guy, he's the real deal. He's not some little yakety sax talking. Well, you heard him on the TV, how low key he is, how straight he is. And if you missed those shows, we're going to have them. They're still up on the internet there at the Messages of Inspirational Stories TV show on Facebook, or you can go to e360tv.com, scroll down to Positive Vibrations, then go to the right. Am I going right or am I going? Anyway, go to your right, whichever right is right for you. Looking at this camera here in reverse, it's a little bit, anyway, it's above my pay grade. Go to the right. And I think our old sticker's there, but it's yellow. It says Messages of Inspiration, or if you see that, that's our show. Click on that and you can pick up go back to the very first one. The marketing relationships. I can't even remember the name of our own shows, I better hush. Donna might come in here and, say, I think you need some help. I'm beyond help, but don't tell her. But Message of Inspiration there at E360 TV. Go to the marketing relationships, because that's what you want to do when you have a business. You need to build relationships between you and your clients. And it's imperative, because they don't buy from you just because of price. If they did, next cheapest price, they're gone, and you'll never go and grow if you're dependent on price, because if you're fighting price, that's saying that you don't have any value. You bring a lot of value to the party. You bring your heart, you bring your spirit of revolution, and you bring your compassion and your love for your fellow person, your fellow man, to treat them and make sure that you meet their needs and take care of them in their hour of need. That's majorly important. Plus, you listen to them. In addition to that, I got to tell you about True Life Purpose Now. Mr. Bill Heinrich, good friend of mine. He's one of the co-creators of the 6-Minute Webinar, which is one of our sponsors. And Mr. Bill Heinrich, he wrote this book. I've seen it. You've seen it before. The 7 Levels of Truth. I know the lights there are kind of bright. The 7 Levels of Truth. And that is a picture of Mr. Bill right there. And he walked away from his life because he was so miserable. The only thing it took from him, in his life, was his name. That's the only thing he kept. Everything else he let go. Took him 25 years to write that book, because he went on a search to find an answer of why he was so miserable. And that's how he came up with, there's 2 emotions. Of course, now not only him, but many others, but he discovered that there really are only 2 emotions. There's fear and there's love. And if you just let go of fear, especially right now, because a lot of people are still worried about this pandemic. They're living in fear. It's creating stress in their lives. You need to let that go. Say, the things, I'm not in control of the weather, so why should I worry about the weather? What I need to do is be proactive and make sure that I'm in a place where, the roof doesn't leak and I don't get rained on, or, if there's a storm coming, that I don't get caught up in the storm. That's just being prudent. And that's part of this revolution spirit that we have, each one of us, because I too am sick and tired of the doom and the gloom. People ask me, well, you talk a lot of things about modern current events and all that. Do you watch TV? No, that's the worst. If you're going to go if you're going to go gather water, You go to a clean spring. You don't go to a polluted spring and bring that water back in your house, okay? Because all the negative stuff in the world can only drag you down. It can only rob you of your health and happiness. So, how are we going to put all this together? Well, let me tell you my concerns about what's going on in the United States. I cannot speak around the world because I don't live there. And I'm since I don't watch news, of course, they never carry. They only tell you what they want you to hear anyway. And that's my warped opinion. But anyway, but there's something concerns me very much. And that is the stimulus package. Oh, when 2020 hit and we couldn't go anywhere, we got stimulus checks. Everybody's, oh, great. But really, was it great? I'm not going to answer that. I'm asking you a question. Really, was it great? Deep down inside for you, was it great? It's certainly when you're saving grace, that's for sure. But we see a pattern here in the United States. People are going to be, right now, a lot of people are fat and happy, as the old saying goes, getting the stimulus checks. But if you notice, there's businesses around, small businesses. We even had the Subway, the sandwich shop. It was up here in the local Walmart. And they had to shut down because they had signs posted, help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. No help would come in. No one would come in and apply for, positions. So they didn't have anybody to wait on the counter. So they had to close down. They may not be closed permanently, but they're closed down. The problem with that, this is for the people that react rather than being proactive, is that when the money runs out, and it's going to run out, and then you decide to go out and get a job, and most businesses are closed up, what are you going to do? That's going to create a lot of stress, right? That's going to create a lot of panic. That's a brand new pandemic. We're going to have a pandemic of stress. So what I'm saying, ladies and gentlemen, if we're proactive now and say, I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to live in fear. I'm going to start this revolution right now in my heart. I'm going to enjoy the love and the abundance of the world. And you know what? No one can stop you. I don't care if you don't have 2 dimes in your pocket. Nobody can rob you of your love and your universal right to abundance. You can go on YouTube, and I've mentioned this before on different shows, but it's worth mentioning. And that is The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. It's on YouTube. If you prefer to read, you can Google or do a internet search. Come on. I think I'm suffering from a traumatic brain injury. But you can do an internet search, and you can actually put in The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale, and you can get it in a PDF form, and you can read it. But what I'm saying to you is that you have the universal right to live in love and abundance. Nobody on planet Earth, I don't care what governing body you live under, nobody can take that right from you. They may limit some things, but only you can raise a white flag and say, I surrender. Don't do that, because you have a special calling in life. Your calling in life is to love yourself first, love others, and then look how you can serve others. I mentioned earlier about the sheltersoldier.org. Think about what a wonderful thing it would be if you created an organization, even though you may not have 2 dimes to put in your pocket, okay? No big deal. Don't let that stop you. Money has never stopped many broke people from getting rich. And look at millionaires who went broke. And what happened? Bounced back, because they knew how to do things. And you can know it too. You can know it too. You might say, well, how? Number 1 is to love yourself and quit trying to force things to happen. The worst thing you do is make a decision, Because once you make a decision, you build a mental box and everything's got to fit inside that box. Instead, make options in your life. That way, you're more flexible. Because sometimes you're trying to go through this door, but there's a door over here it's a bigger door. And remember, small hinges will always open a big door. Don't ever forget that. And when you're following your calling in life, the energy will lead you. I wish I was smart enough to explain it. But I'm wise enough to know that that's the way the world turns. And no one can interfere with that because that comes from a much higher source than any person, ruling governing body, or anybody else. Oh, they may think in the canyons of their mind. I know a lot of people that, well, maybe not a lot, but I know some people in the canyons of their minds, they are giants. Not physically, but, puffed up with pride and, they're just, and everything's about them. Those are the most bankrupt and pitiful people on planet Earth because they're only interested in who's going to butter my bread. They're not interested in reaching out to see if you make sure you got bread in your life. They're too weak and they're too cheap, ladies and gentlemen. They're too weak and they're just too cheap. And another thing too just come to my mind, and I thought about it earlier, but kids nowadays, young kids actually in their 20s and 30s and stuff like that, they adjust more to change more so than older folks. But can you imagine thinking about the way things were? Because if you look at every decade from 1900, 1910, and any decade in previous times, but every single decade, things change. We know that. So why would we sit here and think we want things to go back to normal when that's not going to be reality? It never has been reality. It's not going to be started now. But I'm thinking about kids. I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about these young people. I mean, can you imagine them losing their Wi-Fi or not having a signal? I mean, I heard a comedian here recently talk about the way things were back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and all that. The phone would ring and you'd run to it. And if you didn't get it in time, you would automatically start calling all your family and friends from the numbers that you remembered because you had them stored in your head because there was no answering machines. And I remember those days. I mean, I could do that lickety split, but nowadays if someone asks me what my phone number is, I got to go, yeah, it's da 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 da. But I got to think about it. But that back then, everything was just, it was just automatic. And I remember my grandmother, I only knew one of my grandparents, my grandmother, Grant. She was very content with her life. She was brought up to what some people would say backwoodsy. She never had electricity in her house. When she cooked, she used a wood stove. And at night for lamps, she used kerosene lamps in her house. My dad worked for, the power company. And got to give a 6-minute webinar a little bit of time here too. Where they at? They're down here somewhere. There we are. Our sponsor, 6-minute webinar. My dad worked for the power company. He said, listen, I'll come over to your house. I'll even buy everything I need. And let me at least put in electric lights in your house. And she says, no, I don't want that junk. Here was a lady that lived to be late 70s, early 80s. I'm not sure how old she was when she passed away. But all of her life, from just being a little girl all the way through her life, through her adult life, every time she needed to cook something, she did it on a wood stove, even in the summertime, with no air conditioning, no fans now because there's no electricity in the house. But that's who she was. And as far as lights at night, kerosene lamps. See, that's who she was. And see, my point in bringing up that story You are who you are. You're very, very specially created. As we like to say here sometimes, everybody knows it. Your thumbprint is uniquely yours. No one else has it. So you are a thumb body, but you were created for a purpose. You were created for a reason. And if you're proactive, and if you are willing to be ready to make a revolutionary change in your life, you will start looking out now. Because the normal that we knew, it's in the rear view mirror. And a lot of people are looking in the little bitty rear view mirror when you should be looking out the windshield of life. How can you use your God-given talents, your blessings, your everything to be a blessing to others? Because a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of things have changed. A lot of people have to create their own jobs or create their own careers. I'm not saying you have to create a career, but what I am telling you is that you need to be proactive rather than reactive, because these people sitting around on stimulus checks and all that, when the money runs out and they try to find a job, they're going to be reactive. And history has proven that over and over and over again. If you don't prepare for the future, you're going to suffer the consequences of the current times. And during the Depression, a lot of people were broke, struggling. A lot of people didn't have jobs, but yet there was a lot of millionaires made during the Depression. We don't ever hear about that in the 1930s here in the United States, but we do hear about the doom and the gloom, the dust bowls, and all this other stuff. Because for some reason, bad news sells. And good news is kind of like, oh, that's for somebody else. It's really not for me. Stop that thinking right now. You need to just flush that out of your mind. It's poisoning your mind. You need to love yourself. You need to love others. And find what your calling is in life. And I haven't even stopped for a commercial yet, and we're 47 minutes into the hour, and I apologize for that. No, I don't. I'm okay. But when it comes to being able to adjust to this new change, whatever's coming, the people who are going to be able to excel and not get stressed out are the people who are starting preparing now. And you should prepare now, because we're all going to experience stress to some degree. Nobody's immune to it. It's perfectly normal. It's perfectly natural. It's perfectly human. And that freight train is coming down the track. So you're either going to let the freight train run over you on the track, or you're going to be wise enough to get off the track and just feel the wind as it goes by. The choice is yours. Because when we're dealing with stress, there are some things we can do. We already talked about diet. We talked about the history of the world, how all that comes about, how people get sick and tired of doom and gloom, and they want to live and they want to thrive. Okay, but there's other things you can do. You need to exercise. Go for walks. And one of the best things that I can tell you to do, because it's easy because in sales, I used to teach people in sales, especially worked outside, get the person walking. Because if you get them walking, they will start talking. And it works like a charm. Therefore, try to find someone that you can, go walking with you. Walk and talk. It's a great way of releasing stress. It's a great way also to get, good ideas from time to time, because as you're talking, thoughts are going to get generated. And it's a great habit to get into. Of course, learn how to, when you go to bed, let it go. Find a way, whether it's meditation, whether it's prayer, whatever works for you, find a way to let the worries and the stress of the world go by the wayside. Because we all know most of our worries never come true anyway. And we all know that no one's going to break in your house that night and steal your worries. They'll be there in the morning, so don't worry about them. They're not going to go nowhere. But the focus of it is to get a good night's rest. You got to be properly hydrated for that. You've got to have a relaxed mind for that. You got to say, okay, am I really in control of this? Am I really in control of the COVID-19, the coronavirus? No, I'm not. Am I in control of how it can affect me? Yeah. I can focus on building up my health, my immune system, which is the greatest defense you can have anyway. I can also be wise and maybe not go certain places if I feel like that's not a good place for me. Okay, there's a lot of things that you can do. Focus on what you're in control of. You're in control of your mind. You're in control of your life. And the things that you're not in control of, like people worry about, like we live, people live on the Gulf Coast, and you get hit with hurricanes and stuff like that. People worry about, the next hurricane. Well, you're not in control of the hurricane. But you can properly prepare for the storm that's coming. The more you prepare, the less stress you will have in your life. I remember a sign that I saw back in when I first went in the military. I took basic at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, 1968. Of course, they always had signs everywhere. Signs, like we got ready to go get issued our clothing and all. You had a big sign there. Said, "You're about to become the best dressed soldier in the world," or in the Army, whatever it said. So we go through and we get our T-shirts and our shorts and and fatigue clothes and that's what we call the utility outfits in the days was fatigues. You get your Class A's and your Class B's and you get all, you walk out of there, you almost need it. You feel like a human forklift trying to carry all this stuff out, and there's a big sign there. You are now one of the best dressed soldiers in the world. And I never have forgotten that. But my point being in sharing that little story with you is the fact that you can prepare now for the storms that's coming ahead in your life. You don't have to live in fear. It's avoidable. Most fears are avoidable because you can just say, "Hey, listen, whatever I'm not in charge of, I can't control anyway." And I know this is a simplistic view of looking at it, but I was asked this question. I've asked this many, many times. Think about 5 years ago. Were you worried about something? 5 years ago, I can guarantee you I was worried about something. This is before meeting with Bill Heinrich and reading this book. And this is not some guru. I mean, not some, okay, we're going to start a new, this is just about reality 101. Just like, The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale. It's about reality 101. It's not the, woo-woo stories or anything like that. But 5 years ago, I was definitely worried about something. And if you ask me, "Jim, what was you worried about?" I couldn't tell you. Because 95 or whatever the percentage is real high that your fears will never come true. Let me ask you this, folks. What were you worried about 5 years ago? You may not be able to remember specifically some of the things you've been worried about in the past, but you can remember that some of those things gnawed at you like a rat chewing on a block of cheese, right? And it wears you out. It robs you of your health, your happiness, your energy, your love, the things that you crave and you're entitled to, because what you're entitled to is so precious, money can't buy it, and no thief can steal it. And that is love and abundance of life. You're entitled to that. That's why you were put here on planet Earth. The only place that things like fear and greed and hate and all of the negative things of life that we experience can only survive in one place, and that's planet Earth. It cannot survive on the moon, the Mars, or anywhere else in the universe. Nowhere in the galaxy. In the Milky Way can that stuff that can even exist, much less live or thrive. But the one thing that just keeps reverberating over and over and over is the abundance of love. Because that's what keeps the universe expanding, because the universe is expanding. Everything's a vibration, and that's the energy is fueled by love. You're entitled to that. Tap into the source of love and abundance for you. That is your universal right. And with that, you can deal with stress. When stress hits you upside the head, pow, okay, I didn't see that punch coming. All right, but I'll survive. It's not the end of the world for me. This pandemic is not going to put me in my grave. This thing's not going to make me live like my, what's the old saying? I'm a prisoner in my own house, and I'm the prisoner and the warden. You can live like it if you want to. But the good news of it is you don't have to. You can set yourself free, and you can do it today. And I really enjoyed putting on this show today because I kind of freelanced a lot of things today, folks, as you saw. But whenever I'm a firm believer in this, and I could be as wrong can be, but I'm a firm believer when ideas and thoughts come to my mind, I share it with them because somebody out there might be one person out of all the people watching us, whether it be on Roku, Apple Fire TV, Amazon TV, iPod, or iPhones, or wherever, computers, whatever. There might be that one person. And my duty and my calling in the life is to say that particular thing to that one person to help them in their hour of need. And if I've accomplished that, then I've been more than doubly paid for, if you want to look at it in a physical term. Because if I've blessed others, I'm going to be blessed myself. That's a universal principle, ladies and gentlemen. No one can break in on you and rob you and steal you that. That is YOURS. That is yours, baby. Cling to it. Do not live in fear. For many years I did. I lived in frustration, and I lived, inside my mind, a lot of people are not allowed in there, because I couldn't share my world with others. Oh, I had some pretty heavy mental baggage, you might say, when I came back from Vietnam. And it was decades before I'd even mention anything about Vietnam. And because what am I going to say? Who am I going to talk to? Our worst days over there compared to some worst days over here, someone might spill coffee on their new clothes going to the office. Oh yeah, that's a great comparison, But I mean, that was who I was for a long time, and I enslaved myself. I don't talk about Vietnam now or anything like that because it's, there's no value to it. But the point of it is that I do want to say is that you have the God-given right, the constitutional right to be able to, the universal right. I mean, let's just supersede everybody, the creator of the universe and the universal right to live your life with love and abundance. And ladies and gentlemen, I got to put my glasses on here. Our time is gone. And we didn't do a single commercial day except we talked about our great sponsor that we have. I'm not our sponsor, but the charity that we sponsor, the Shelter of Soldier. Be sure and check them out. And I hope and pray somebody out there would say, hey, we could save dogs from being put to sleep. We could train them to be good companions for people who are lonely or suffering from depression. What a blessing that would be, wouldn't it? Think about the joy and the jubilee that you would have in your heart if you were able to put that together. And just ask others, hey, this is what I'd like, this is my calling in life, or this is a mission that I'm taking. Would you like to help me? Or do you know someone who can help me? And follow the energy. It's that simple. And I hope hope I've inspired you to try that. Most importantly, thank you so much for tuning in today. And I hope and pray that, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, that I was able to say one thing to that one person out there to help them in their hour of need. If I've done that, then my time was well spent. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening. Remember to love yourself first, then you can love others. And don't forget, if it's your birthday today, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. And Donna's backstage says, please, Jim, stop singing. I just can't have any fun, But but anyway, remember this, that on your birthday, all of your birthday cakes and all the precious sweets that you enjoy, they are health food. Don't let anybody tell you different, because I voted on that and I was unanimous in that vote. So we'll see you tomorrow. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye now. Have a good evening.